Good morning. I know some of you are still filling in, so just keep on coming in, filling the seats. We do have a sold-out event this year, so if you have a seat next to you and someone needs a seat, make sure that you make that available so we can give everyone a chance to have a comfortable, amazing seat for DevReach 2017. Welcome to the conference. How many people? How many of you, is this your very first DevReach? Okay, a lot of hands, almost like 80% of the room. Welcome to DevReach. How many people have been to DevReach before in the past? Okay, there we go, about 20% of the hands. How many people have been to all of the DevReaches here in Sophia? Oh, 3 hands. Well, welcome back. Congratulations on being the troopers. DevReach, this is the 9th official DevReach, so we're really excited to have this back here in Sophia, and we've got a great conference lined up for you over the next 2 days. As a matter of fact, we've got 3 separate tracks with all kinds of great content, over 25 speakers, and attendees and speakers from 20 different countries here today for the next couple of days of sessions, good times, conversation, networking. So you're in the right place if you want to learn about some great topics from some great speakers. I want to give you a few logistics to get the conference going. We've got a great keynote this morning from Chris, who I'm going to hand this off to in just a moment, but a few things you should know about before the conference gets going. One of the things is we've partnered with Because this year for a charitable event to make scholarships available to children in need who need help furthering their education. So we've got some great t-shirts out in the hallway. All the proceeds from these t-shirts go straight to these scholarships. So if you want to help out a great cause and you want to get a cool developer t-shirt, head out in the hallway, grab one of these. They're extremely limited edition. There's only 50 of each of these designs you see on the screen in different sizes. So if you want to get the design you want and the size you want, I recommend you go early, grab one of these shirts, and help out a great cause while you're here at DevReach. We also have a great attendee party planned for tomorrow night. So after all the sessions have wrapped up, after your brains are full of all the things that you take out of the content here, join us just across the street at the Holiday Inn. We've got music, drinks. It'll be a great time to continue the networking and wrap up what should be an amazing conference, so don't miss that. I'm also supposed to tell you about a small logistics change in your paper schedules. For tomorrow's day, there is no opening keynotes. You're going to go straight into the sessions, but in the front end and JavaScript track, the 10:45 and noon sessions are flipped. So if you want to see Eric Lawrence's HTTPS, be here at 10:45. If you want to see Eddie's How to Be a Good Open Source Citizen, that'll be at noon. So one small logistic change. The website is up to date, so you can go there if you can't remember. I also, of course, have to thank our great sponsors. An event like this is not possible without sponsors to make that happen, and we have some outstanding sponsors helping us put on all of this, including the parties and everything you see happening here. Between sessions, please spend time with the sponsors in the hallway, talk to them, and let them know that you appreciate them helping make this event possible. And of course, I have to thank Progress as well. For those of you who I've not met before, I should say, my name is Todd Anglin, and I'm Vice President of Product and Developer Relations at Progress. And it's a real honor to be here to represent both Progress and the teams that put this on. And one of the reasons we brought DevReach back, DevReach has been, we haven't run it for the last 2 or 3 years. And one of the reasons we did bring it back is because right now is a pretty exciting time to be an application developer. There are all kinds of new technologies and new trends that as developers we have to keep up with if we want to keep our skills and our apps current. And now more than ever, there's a lot that you can learn or you need to learn to be successful. From a Progress land, you probably mostly know us from either our Kendra UI JavaScript widgets or our .NET Ninja .NET UI components. Or maybe if you're in the mobile space, you're now more familiar with NativeScript, our cross-platform framework for creating native apps for iOS and Android using JavaScript. So as these technologies and as these trends continue to change application development, at Progress, we're doing quite a bit to try to help your lives, as always, remain as simple as possible so you can build the best apps possible across all forms of screen, from the new and emerging AR and VR space all the way down to IoT. We want to make your lives as developers easier because that's basically what we do. We wake up every day and we think about ways to do this. From the front-end technologies you know, to even now back-end technologies like Kinvey, all designed to make your lives as developers simpler. I like to say, we're going to test this. We've got to warm up the audience. We've got some great speakers. I want the audience to be as warm as possible. So we're going to say, you plus Progress equals cat gif. Can we? Yeah, that's a Bulgarian laughter. That's the timid laughter I was expecting. You have to do better for our speakers. We brought our speakers a long way. So let's try this again. I'm going to go back. You plus Progress equals really funny cat gif. Yes. Still pretty weak, but You're warming up. It's 9:30. I get it. So check out some of the great stuff Progress is doing. Of course, Progress enjoys putting on this event so you can bring the developer community together, and I think you'd find some great stuff there you might like. So we've got great topics. Keynote this morning is a touch on one of those, PWAs, and Chris is an outstanding speaker who's going to come here and give you our keynote talk this morning. So let me just leave you with this. Have fun, enjoy DevReach, take pictures, meet new people, and we hope you enjoy the next 2 days here at DevReach 2017. So Chris, come on up.
That's the wrong screen. Okay. Let me just try. That's it. Don't touch it. Don't. See, works. Magic. Excellent. Okay, good. Hello and good morning. I'm here to talk to you about progressive web apps today. I've never been in a cinema before. Well, I've been in a cinema before, of course, but never actually gave a talk before. And I never gave my talk in Dolby Atmos surround sound, which is kind of unfortunate. My voice is going right now because I'm suffering from a thing called man flu, which all of you know is lethal and needs a lot of support from you. So my voice might be going halfway through, but it's okay. The slides will still be there. We're all good. So I want to talk about progressive web apps today for you, and progressive web apps is a thing that's right now in everybody's mind, and there's a big hype about it. There's not a single conference where you can go and nobody will actually tell you what PWAs are, what PWAs are not, and a lot of times you will hear a lot of things that say, oh, don't worry about it. I want to not necessarily show you through how to build a PWA or how to do that. There's lots and lots of talks about this, but I want you to understand today what is happening here and why PWA is a change that we needed and a change that is happening right now. So first of all, I'm Chris Hyman. I'm Code Poet on Twitter in case you want to see pictures of my dog and kittens and hedgehogs and some stuff about JavaScript as well. And we were asked to put this in there so you can give us reviews like bit.ly dr 2017 Heilman. That's not an R at the end, that's another N, it's just being cut off. So that's what you get for getting a screen like this. And all the links and all the resources that I'm going to talk about today are in this second link, that aka.ms mobile era, because it was another conference that I set up this short link. I work for Microsoft. I've been there for 2.5 years now, and I'm doing a lot of open source stuff for Microsoft and a lot of open outreach to developers to make sure that what we do or what they do works outside of Chrome as well, which is the other big problem that we have nowadays, that everything is basically one environment again, rather than like all the environments that should be there on the web. I'm part of the PAX team, which is, I just wanted to show that logo because it's so cool. I have no idea if it has anything to do with what we're doing, but I always like that people think I work for NASA or something like that. This is pretty cool. We're bringing peace to space, or I don't know what that is. A lot of it is talking to people about their apps and how to make their apps better. So progressive web apps are all the rage. There's like Google I/O. At our keynote at Build, we had a few things in there. Samsung is talking about it. Mozilla is talking about it. Everybody comes up with a different idea of what progressive web apps are. Originally, Alex Russell and Francis Berryman defined a PWA, I think about 1.5 or 2 years ago, and they said these are all the things that a PWA has to be. It has to be progressive, responsive, network independent, app-like, fresh, safe, discoverable, re-engageable, installable, and linkable. And then, of course, they said it's a pick and mix, so you don't need to do all of them. But regardless of this, that is a lot of things to actually expect from one of our applications to do. And I think it's kind of too much to ask for in most cases. So a lot of people, when that came out, said like, nice, but nah, that's gonna happen. And other people were kind of miffed about the A part in the PWA, in the progressive web app. They said like, well, it's using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript technologies, so why does everything have to be an app? Why can't some of the things that the PWA stack give you be applied to my blog or to my photo site or to my game or my whatever. And they're right. My colleague Aaron Gustafson did a really good article on A List Apart lately where it said, like, yes, that project should be a PWA, where he lists all the different projects that people have on the web and what part of the progressive web app stack these tools can use or these products can use to become better. So that's a good thing to have. I think that's very important to understand that PWA is not a packaged format like we used to have like an HWA or UWP or a Firefox OS app or a Web OS app. It's a different set of technologies that you can build things with, and they can be applied piecemeal to different ways that we publish things on the web. So progressive web apps, to me, before we actually go into what they are, I think it's more important to understand what they are not, because there's a lot of like information being thrown at you right now. The first thing, which I don't have listed here, is they're not a Google-only thing. And Google hates that, actually, that everybody says, like, oh, it's a Google thing only, because there's a lot of players involved. There's Mozilla, there's Samsung, there's Microsoft, there's Apple showed interest. There is other people that basically want to do the same thing as well. It's not a Google technology, it's an open web technology, standardized in public, defined in public, and with lots of discourse from different companies in there. But what I'm mostly miffed about is when people start spamming you with like, buy our software and you can build a PWA. Sure, you could build a terrible PWA by buying a certain piece of software that does one thing and one thing well. But it's an opportunity for you to do so much more than just have a tick box at the end of your development flow and say, like, roll that out as a PWA as well. The great thing about the web is that with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I can start with this and convert it to anything else that I want to. If I start with something binary, I cannot convert it back to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, or I should not. There's probably ways of doing it which will result in horrible, horrible things, which we all had to endure from time to time when you go on the internet and you're like, hey, we only got 5 megabytes of JavaScript for you because we want to show you a picture of a kitten, which happens sadly enough all the time. It's not the end of all native development. A lot of people are going poo-pooing native apps right now. Android is dead, iOS apps are dead, PWA needs to be everything. No, there are things that only make sense native. There are things that the web cannot do yet or was not meant to do, so that's totally fine to actually do in a native environment. The same way not everything in Flash was evil. Flash had great ideas, Flash had good technology, but we like in fire and brimstone and pitchforks, like everything in Flash should die and be replaced by HTML5. By now, yes. By now, I basically think the Flash plugin is basically malware, and you shouldn't try to trust it any longer. But some things are native, that's fine. Not everything has to be a PWA. Not every web content needs to be converted into a PWA either. People are getting very excited about like, oh, I'm turning my blog into an app right now. You can do that. I don't necessarily see it as a necessity. I see the benefit of using some of the technology of PWA to make your blog faster, to make it better, but I don't see anybody putting the Christian Heilmann app on their mobile phone. And if they did, it would be creepy. You know, like I blog every week or something like that. I don't need you to actually, that's what RSS was invented for. This is what readers are invented for. Not necessarily installing every single website that I have as an application makes no sense to me. Native apps don't necessarily need to be ported to the web, and we've done that and failed. This is why when we talked earlier about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as a base for applications, we kind of tried to simulate what native applications did. We tried to make this like, almost looks like an app. If nobody pokes at it and moves things around, we will find out that it's actually as good. Think about it differently. Think about a native application being a thing that is delivered in bulk, and think about a PWA as something that gets delivered and gets better with the environment it's running in. That's the progressive part of it. And also the connectivity that it has and the necessity that the user want to have. So instead of asking the user to do everything for your application to use it, we just basically ask them when we need it. Don't ask for camera access up front. Ask for camera access once you need it, and then they can say yes or no. So think about that kind of access that people have to your application. So to me, progressive web apps are a development approach of using a set of technologies that allows web content to be app-like experiences, including offline functionality, notification, and device access. So all the beautiful things that we wanted apps for, that we needed apps for, are now available for web technology or web experiences without actually having to go through the pains of packaging them up, sending them to an app store, people hopefully finding them and downloading them. They're progressive. The experience of the application improves with the capability of the device in use and the quality of the connection. On my Android, that is two Androids behind the latest Google build, they're okay. On the newest Google internal Android, or that is on the Pixel phone, they're friggin' amazing. On a desktop, they don't do much yet. We have to answer that. On a Samsung phone, they do great stuff. On an iOS phone, they give you an icon and all these kind of things that you expect from an app as well, but not most of the things that make PWA really interesting. But that doesn't matter. Gives the people something to use. Make the first use case the most important thing in your application, and the rest is fluff around it. The rest can become better. When I go to Google and I do a web search, yeah, it's cool. I type it in, it gives me the results automatically, it shows me images and videos and all this cool stuff going on. If I'm connected, if the speed is good enough. If for some reason JavaScript doesn't run, because a proxy server in between is not working, the internet is not well enough, I still get a search box. I can hit the enter button and I get a search result page that looks awful, but it gives you the search results. And this is how Google makes money. They show you search results with ads next to it. So for them, it was very important that that use case works in any way. So if you write a blogging platform, allowing people to read the blog posts and allowing people to write the blog post is the most important thing. The 10,000 things about statistics and click-throughs and discuss spying on you and allowing for comments, that's not that necessary. Make sure that it does one thing well and the rest comes after that. It's an opportunity to take these technologies right now and approach and clean up what we do right now. Clean up and speed up the current web-based projects. All the tech involved in PWA are open standards, and they can be used in a pick and mix format. And boy, do we need to make the web better. It's awful. It's absolutely terrible to go on the web, where a normal news site nowadays, it's about that much news and that much advertising and crap around it that I didn't come for. And pop-ups, and my favorite is when you go to a website that is really slow loading, really annoying because you have to click down 12 pop-ups and like, please can we send cookies, and hey, we got notifications too now. And then it asks me after like, I start reading the article, it pops up, hey, by the way, we have an app. Do you want to download that too? Like, yeah, I'm on roaming here. I just paid $20 to actually read your website. Of course I want to download 50 meg because my money is only there for you. And I wished I could read this article, you know? It's an opportunity to reconsider what we call apps as well and how users find, use, and discard them, as what we're doing right now does not work. I gave a talk at a TED conference 2 years ago how I said that native applications on mobile phones are the most annoying step back in software distribution in the last 20 years. What it allowed us to do is, instead of having the web, where I have functionality and content on demand, where I go and I find something cool and I use it, and I thank people by being there, by clicking on their ads, by doing things, out of a sudden we could package this stuff up and own it. And the end user had to jump through hoops to start getting to our content. And if we wanted to take it away from the user, we could do that. You could never charge for a new version of a website, but you could charge for a second version of an application and make it impossible for older users of the first application to upgrade. And that's not a good experience for our end users. The other big problem, of course, is that the drop-off that we have in stores and marketplaces is immense, because you go somewhere, you're like, okay, cool, you have an app, I try it out. You go to the store, please log in first. Give us your credit card details, firstborn son, 5 pints of blood, something like that before you can actually access the applications. Then you download the application. Well, most of the time you can't even link through directly to the application, so you have to do a search and hope you don't find the 15 spam versions of the app, but the app that you came for. Like misspelling misspelling on malware on marketplaces is huge. And then you go there, you download it, you install it. You download it, it takes ages. You install it, you hopefully have enough space on your mobile phone to install the thing, and then you don't like it and you delete it again, and you wasted an hour of your life and lots of data to try these things out. There was some great info on some podcast where they had several people from Google Search talking with each other, and it ended up that like 60% of the apps in the in the Android store have never ever been downloaded. Never. They're just there, and somebody got paid for that, and somebody said, like, we want to have an app because websites are shit. So they never even been looked at. Most apps lose all their users in the first 3 months because they can't retain them. And people use the app for 2 days, and then they don't come back anymore. So when you look at who makes money with native applications, the way we publish them right now, it's the people who own the stores and the apps that come on your phone when you actually have it. I mean, it's the same with me. I mean, I've got like 50 apps on there. I use 3 or 4. Google Maps, Google Translate, Outlook, the stuff that I need to do for work, a few games that I get bored and then throw away again. And yet, every time I go on wireless, it says like, oh, by the way, 20 apps want to update themselves. I haven't used them. I don't care about them anymore, but they want to update all the time because there's a new level of that I haven't even reached yet, or a logo had changed. Instead of changing that logo when I open the app, I have to download 50 meg or 120 meg of that new application. This is not a good experience for our end users. Now, for the purpose of this keynote, let's talk about apps. Let's not talk about the web stuff that PWA could encourage as well. So what is an application? To me, it's an interface to do things with. If I don't do something with what you do, probably packaging up as an app is not worth my while, because I want to do something with that. An app is something where I give you things, and you give me things back. That could be a search box, that could be just a blogging platform, that could be anything, or I can click on fluffy animals and make them explode when they go on other fluffy animals. Those are applications, but a book is not an application to me unless I can also edit it, or unless I can put things onto it, write extra things on it, share it with friends, these kind of things. Now, if we go back to when we started using applications and put them on the web, it wasn't fun, and it still isn't. This is our travel booking website that I have to use right now in some company. I'm not going to mention that, but I'm working for. This was built for a much lower resolution on a bigger screen. So on my 3000 by 2000 display on this new Surface Book, these drop-downs are just basically annoying as hell. I can't even reach them. I have to use my pen or my finger or something like that. And every time I type something in, it loads something in the background without telling me. So by the time I type something else in, the whole form changes and takes me away from the input field that I just went in there. The problem was back then that technology of the web wasn't good enough to do something useful like an application in a browser. So the first thing we do is information overload. So instead of telling me like, hey, you probably want to have a flight, here's your form, it shows me all the shit that I do later that I don't want to have right now. It gets me like a more services, trip summary, service tools, whatsoever. There's so many things on that screen that at that moment I don't need. And that's not an application. That's just basically putting your problems into the face of the user and hope that they pick and love something in there. This is not how you make happy users. It's a UI for a big screen with low resolution. It has a fat connection dependency as well. Offline or in a flaky connection, this thing is pointless. It doesn't do anything at all. It's actually quite fun because this in there is an iframe. So every time I'm loading this, I get an iframe error inside the other one, and then I reload the other one. It says like, why do you do this? Do you really want to leave this page? And you're like, yeah, it's broken. That's why I want to leave it. There's no offline experience at all, and it's hardly usable on mobile. Even on a huge resolution mobile phone, there's basically the font is like 2 pixels or something. And yeah, man, In Cyrillic, maybe it will make sense, but not for me. I also love all these messages up there, these error messages that have nothing to do with what I'm doing right now, that just somebody put in there. Please read it in red. When we got better at the web, when IE6 finally died and other browsers took over, and we got nicer CSS options, and even things like SharePoint started to make things better, we created things like that. That is our expense system of some company I'm not going to talk about now. And that's better. It's kind of easier to understand, but it's still quite not the thing that I want to have. Every time you build something like this, think about it. Options on the screen are not choices for the end user, they're decisions for the end user. You're freaking out the end user by giving them too many choices. They just want to try everything, and they just came in there, it's like, I got a receipt here. Can I put that in, please? That's what I came for. Not like, oh, do you want to see your history of your expenses of the last 2 years? And you're like, no, it's too painful. I don't want to see how much money I spent. It's a non-adaptive UI, so if I watched that on a mobile phone, it didn't do anything either. Even on a smaller screen, it's unusable because things overlap each other. Again, no offline functionality and no access to useful hardware options. I've got a camera in there. I've got a receipt. Why can't I hold this up there and take a picture of this? Why do I have to take my mobile phone, take a picture of the receipt, put it up on Google Photos, get it from Google Photos into OneDrive, from OneDrive into our SharePoint, and then back into this thing? That makes no sense. There's a hardware functionality in here that I want to access. Nobody thought about that back then, because back then on the web, we didn't have access to these things. The security is by jumping through lots of hoops as well. You need to be on the VPN, and then I need to be after my login, and probably forgot my password, so I reset myself, and then I got a two-factor authentication that calls me back on my mobile phone, which of course is not available because I'm in another country, and so on and so forth. And I just want to put this one receipt in. That's what I came for. Isn't there a way of doing that? There is. That's where apps came in. This is a Windows 10 app now, UWP. And that one is exactly what I want. This shows me just the receipts that I had on my credit card, the last things that I paid, and then like, hey, click on this, take a picture, send it off to your boss, be rich and happy, and do something else and be effective afterwards. Show me what I have and where it should go. Don't show me everything at once. Show me the one thing that I came for. Think about why would people use an expense app. Allow me to quickly get an overview. This is cool, because I got these big badges here telling me what these things are. Like, here's how much it costs, what it was, when it was, rather than like, okay, filter by address, filter by restaurants, and so on and so forth. Don't expect an interaction model. This works with screen, this works with touching, this works with a mouse, this works with a pen, this works with a cat, I don't know, anything. Don't expect me to have these like drop-down menus that I really need to have like fine motor control and not a fat finger. Make sure that the interface that you build for people has breathing space. And allow me to use what my device offers. In this case, a camera. In this case, a camera as well. This is great stuff to have. Not only an upload of images, but like just take a picture right now. The next step then we did was mobile apps. And they're good. They're just the only problem is that people saw mobile first as mobile only. So from time to time, you go to a desktop and you have a button this big. This would be fun to see here, you know? But that's basically what you get, because people expect you have a mobile phone. You get a 4,000 pixel button, and you're like, that better be a great button to press. It's going to be a rollover. They're like, whoa, amazing. This is, again, a travel app from some company. It was interesting because I thought the plus would be book another flight. Nah. It's basically put extra things on that itinerary that I didn't have the information for. So that's a pointless button. Don't make pointless button. Every buttons on the screen that you have should be loved. Otherwise, unloved buttons are a terrible thing. Make the pain of store access and installation worth my while. That was fun getting this one, because as it is an enterprise app, I needed to put a virus scanner on my Android device. I needed to put a portal on my Android device that gets me access to enterprise applications. And then in the last step, it asked me to please turn my Android to allow for installations outside the Google Store. So I went through 3 levels of security to make my phone completely insecure, because now any drive-by download on the web could happen as well. And you're like, this is not what I came for. Please don't do that to me. Let me use my device to its abilities. So that is good. The camera is accessed, the navigation is there. Let me do what I came for. This is a very simple interface that actually does the trick. I know I'm flying from this case to Berlin to Oslo. Use notifications that allow me to do things. So instead of having to go to the app and find the information, I should get an alert saying like, hey, in 2 hours your flight is happening. You probably should get your ass to the airport and go for it. Use notifications wisely. Don't you make them the new pop-ups. This is happening already. You go to a website, you probably had that as well, and the first thing you get is a notification. Like, do you want to get notifications from this website? You're like, buy me dinner first. I have no idea who you are. Like, this is an intrusive thing. There's enough things on my on my device that ask me for information all the time. Don't make every application a very needy Tamagotchi. If you make a notification, make sure I can do something in the notification. Otherwise, it's probably not necessary. Just telling me that something changed, please love us and come back to our application. I don't have that much love for you. There's enough apps on my phone or on my desktop that actually vie for your attention. They work offline and they don't expect massive data downloads on non-Wi-Fi. So that's another thing that I want an application on my mobile device to do. I don't want to have the 120 meg update just because there's new flights available. Now, when we put all the good things together of those, then we get PWAs. That's what PWAs are supposed to do. Take the best of the web, take the best of native, and give a great experience for our end users. This is a great example called Vadin. And this is an expense app. So now you go in there and you see your expenses and you can scroll through them in a very simple manner on your mobile phone. The plus button would allow you to give a new expense, and it takes the camera and OCR scans the thing and gets the information into the form from the picture, and you have your expenses. You can search them by calendar. You see all the integration on the mobile phone works. On a desktop, the same thing. Does the same, but more, because I have more screen estate. Instead of spreading out that table to be unusable, I now have stats next to it, and I have the search form available all the time, rather than I show and hide it like I would do on a mobile phone. So that functionality is there. And the best thing about this application is that it's actually just a website. This is a web interface that becomes an app by using the stack of PWA. And this is exactly what we should be building. The best experience for the environment that I'm in, for the interaction model that I'm in, using open technologies so the app can actually change itself to the needs of the end user rather than the end user to the needs of the app. Let's take about the positives and the negatives of what native and what the web is doing. The best thing about the web is the link. It's a simple distribution model. If I want you to look at my website, I say, hey, christianheilmann.com. Click on that. Try it out, find it out yourself. The link has been the main success of the web. Without the link, there wouldn't be any web. And that's why it's terrible when people build links that are dying or are bad, hard to read or are not reusable. Make sure that your links work, because it's just the easiest way to get users to your thing. Simple atomic updates. If I change my logo, I change my logo. I don't ask you to download christianheilmann.com again. You load the website, and next time the logo changes, you're like, oh, cool, that's fine. Or hopefully you say, oh, cool. Flexible layout options. In CSS nowadays, we've got immensely great things. We've got grids, we've got flexbox, we've got media queries, we got VW and VH, which is typography according to the viewport size and viewport width. These are all flexible things that you can build very, very beautiful interfaces with, which in the past we needed things like UI frameworks for. These are supported in all the new browsers, and they fall back to easier usable things in older browsers as well. Don't build for old browsers. Don't build only for the bleeding edge. Build with a fallback that makes sense, and you will be happy. A grid could be a stacked display, but in a grid browser, it becomes a wonderful grid, and you don't have to worry about making it perform well because the browser does these issues for you and fixes these issues for you. It's got a small data footprint. It loads on demand and environment. So instead of packaging your 6,000 JavaScript npm modules into one JavaScript file, load a loader, a bootstrap loader up front, and then load when people need it, rather than like hope that people need it and basically lose a lot of users because you ask them to download too much. And reusability of code. Conversion to other form factors. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript can be converted to something binary. The other way around, not so much. Of course, there's negatives on the web. The first one is there's Apache access to hardware. Like accessing a camera in JavaScript itself is possible, it's beautiful, but I'd rather use a native environment and say like input type picture and allow the operating system to deal with this. I think my favorite API ever when it comes to HTML5 is in the part of the video API, where you can ask can play type. You can say can play type WebM, and there's 3 return values that the API gives you. Anybody know them? Empty string, probably, or maybe. This is a standardized API. This is a standard. I still don't understand why. It's like, I don't want to flirt with an API, you know, like I don't want to, maybe, you know? I don't know. Why did I ask you if you don't have an answer for me? You know, like, this makes no sense. But there's these wonderful gems in the HTML5 stack, so sometimes we still have problems with that. Verification and authentication is kind of hard. Making things work properly and verifying an end user can be quite a pain. Huge fragmentation of devices and displays. You do not know what people on the web use to access your content. And you have no right to tell them to download a certain browser. There was a company that in the 1990s told you that IE6 is the best browser ever and you never have to deal with anything else. And that was a shit idea. And that I don't want that idea to happen again. I don't want people to say like, oh, it works in Chrome, fine. No, it should work everywhere. Not the same everywhere, it should work everywhere. Patchy trust and capabilities, that is relying on that as well. People trust an app that they downloaded much more than they trust a website to do things, because there are so many horrible things on the web with drive-by downloads, malware injection, XSS, all the kind of things that we've seen that can go wrong on the web. So people trust it not as much as they trust something that they put effort in. But when you spend money on something, you like it much more. When you spend time and effort on something, you trust it more as well. It's got to be good quality because it was expensive, right? Payments are not easy or expected. And that's, I think, one of our biggest failures as the people who love the web, like I did, was that we raised a whole generation of people that think everything is free. That think like, oh, cool, showing ads is a viable business model. No, it's a viable spying model on your end users. It's a terrible idea just to put ads on something because you have nothing to sell. We should be allowed, even on the web, to ask money for our software and have a simple way of people to pay for it. The Web Payments API is coming, so that's happening. But there is a barrier to people to say, like, everything on the web should be free. When we released Edge, the first thing everybody wanted was an ad blocker. And I love that argument when people are like, yeah, I don't want to be spied on, that's why I use an ad blocker. And I'm like, oh, that's why you watch Game of Thrones in a country where it's not available, right? So don't give me any of that, like, I don't want to be spied on. You want to use stuff for free that is not free. That's why people use ad blockers. And the more we use them, the more aggressive the ads will become, because they want to make money. So we should be starting to own the data of the web and be able to pay for the data of the web. And there's cool stuff coming in the blockchain world that can help with that. What about native? The positives of native, they're offline capabilities by design. These things were made offline. If you have built an app that doesn't work offline, you haven't built an app. You have built something that annoys me. Don't do that. The app should work offline. Otherwise, I will not use it ever again, and I will come after you on Twitter. You got full access to hardware. You got authenticated, verified device access. This drives me crazy. This knows who I am and where I am. Physically and mentally, and no, mentally not much, but in time. Why do I have to go to your website and type in yet another password, yet another username? I'm authenticated. This is a passport. I can totally use that thing to log into your website. Please give me that functionality. Don't ask users to authenticate over and over and over again. We need to have one way of accessing this. And with the hardware access, I can have facial recognition, I can have finger recognition, I can have, like, I don't know, fart recognition will be the next one, whatever we come up with. This is much better than your password field will ever be. So let's find a way to make these two work together better. It's a high trust distribution model. Weirdly enough, people trust things they download on a marketplace much more than they actually do on the web. Easy payments. Again, it's different. Why does everybody release on iOS first? Because iOS users spend money. Android users want to have everything for free with ads on top, or pay 99 cents tops. So that's the same problem that the web has there. But paying on a mobile phone, as I am authenticated, as I needed to have a credit card to even get into the system of my operating system, already much easier than on the web. Bleeding edge technology on mobile devices and on native environments is a competitive advantage. That's why all these things happen there. Yes, we won't have any 3D touch, iOS, whatever thing on the web in any time soon, but that's because they invented that and didn't standardize it. And standardizing takes long. The good thing is we can learn from some of the things. They can be discarded, they can be found. I love how Apple manages to invent things that have been invented before and everybody congratulates them for it. Like when iOS now had facial recognition, everybody's like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And you're like, well, Samsung had it for 4 years. I can do it on my Windows 10 box. Like, yeah, but it's not Apple, is it? Like, so it can't be really good. You got to give them credit, though. Like, a lot of the things that other people implemented half-assed, they've done really well. But at the same time, I love when the same privacy concerns come up. And they're like, what about if I got a twin? What about if I'm dead? Like, what about my facial recognition? I'm like, we've answered all of these things. We've done those things before. Okay, let's talk about them again. Well, maybe people think more about them. Negative native. Huge data footprint and non-atomic updates. I always make the joke about 50 meg. And when I look at the size of apps right now, we're at the 150, 200 meg update cycle of applications. And you're like, really? 200 meg? That was more than my first hard drive, you know? That was like incredible back then. I remember when I had a machine that was like overclocked to 350 megahertz. And I'm like, whoa, we'll never be as fast as that. That's so cool. Slow update cycles because of negotiation overhead. So fixing a security bug in a native application is much harder than on the web because you cannot hot reload, or some environments allow you, others don't. You never know. High expectations and breakneck competition. So you need to be really, really good to be even showing up on people's radar as a new application. And the biggest problem is the price race to the bottom. You cannot have a $15 application on an app store in Android. Nobody will care. It has to be a 99-cent one, and then make it as unusable as possible so people give you the rest of the $15 by upgrading later on while they're using the thing. And I'm just getting tired of this. I don't want to download something and then not be able to use it properly until I pay. Just tell me up front, I give you $20. Fine. It's good. I trust you to a degree. My brother is a comic book artist, or tries to be. And I gave him a tablet for his birthday. And then I thought, like, okay, an Android tablet. And I'm like, okay, let's find him a cool painting app so he can paint his comics on the thing. Don't look for a painting app in the Android store. It's like, paint this cat, paint this elephant, paint this Eiffel Tower, paint this. People upload like 60 million apps with one JPEG that you basically can paint on, something I could do in 5 lines of JavaScript. But they packaged it up and sold it as an app. The one I found? Autodesk. I would have never thought that I ever use an Autodesk app in my whole life again. Like after, I mean, I only see that for like architects to use and these kind of things. They built a really cool app. You never heard about it, and you won't find it until you know somebody from Autodesk that actually shows you, or another comic artist that say like, use that one. That makes sense. Bespoke development for each platform with only minor reuse. So you build for iOS, you build for Android. Meh. You build for both of them, you have to hire twice as many engineers. Of course, you can use React Native, or you can use other abstraction models, but a lot of times when people want to build for iOS, then they also want to use everything cool and new from iOS that happens there. So how do PWAs bridge these differences? How do we actually get the best out of both worlds? Well, first of all, the PWA needs to be served from a secure origin. So it needs to be on HTTPS or HTTP2. And that way we can give you a lot more functionality than on an insecure environment. And HTTP is just not safe anymore. Man-in-the-middle attacks, these kind of things, not a good idea. So once you get HTTPS, you have access to the camera, you have access to the geolocation, you have access to the battery, all of these things that we thought were great to give you on the web, and then we realized it's a massive security problem that you can fingerprint somebody with the battery usage, for example. A PWA also needs to have a manifest file, so user agents know about its requirements and give access to the needed features. This has been done before. This has been on Firefox OS, it was a manifest. On WebOS, it was a manifest. On Apple, it was shitloads of meta tags that you put on the page. And we've done all these things before. But now we have a manifest file that has a standardized JSON object, where you have a short name, a long name, the icons, you have a canonical URL, where your application starts, you have a display, orientation, background color, theme color, and the different ways what it needs to access and what it needs to have. Now, what is the really cool thing about this? It's not only that we have a standardized way of telling something that's an app, but an app manifest itself is a signal. It is on the web and says like, this is an application. So what about the users that don't want to just go to a URL and want to go to an app store and find your application there? Well, as a manifest file is a file on the web, we can index it and we can ingest it. And that's what we do right now. Search engines can go out there and say like, well, that's an application, that's not only a website, so what do we do with that? Much like, that's an AMP site, we give you the carousel, rather than like, that's an HTML page, we cannot do you that. Now Bing, in case you don't know, it's a search engine, you can Google for that, does that already. So this is what the store on Windows looks like, and this is for the Channel 9 application, which is the Channel 9 HTML page with a manifest on it. And in the Bing search results, it actually shows up as an application. It pulls in the description, the icon, the ratings, how much it costs, and it gives you an install button. So instead of just being a normal search result and realizing it's a PWA that way, you even have a way to install it directly into the store or into your operating system that way. And that's pretty powerful. The rest of the content also comes from the manifest. So you have the name, you have the description, you have the icons, you have the screenshots, and basically all these things come together. So you don't have the problem that your description of your application becomes outdated and becomes out of sync with the live thing that you have on the web, because it is the website. That's what a PWA is. The other bit of the PWA stack is a service worker. And that's been the thing that, I thought I had one used already, okay. That's the thing that gets me really excited and is a really, really interesting part of it, but also can become very complex very quickly. Now, a service worker is a worker. Much like a web worker allows you to do heavy calculations outside the main thread of a JavaScript application without slowing down the interface, a service worker runs in the background independent of the main thread of the operating system. This also means every time you start one, you probably want to stop one as well and even stop it from working, because they don't die on their own. So make sure you don't overload people's end users' phones and operating systems if it's not really needed. However, what a service worker can do for you is that it stands between your application and the network, and it allows you to cache things. So it's a proxy server that is scriptable in JavaScript, if you think about it. Not like something like Charles or something like that you had to do by hand, but it's just a way of caching and intercepting everything that happens. You define the rules what should be cached and loaded from where. No more hoping that the browser actually caches things. I remember when we were like, I hope these images are still cached, because otherwise it's going to be slow. Now I can say, okay, here's an images cache, here's an HTML cache, here's a PDF cache, here's a video cache. You name these things and you store them in there, you delete them from them, and you update from them. You're fully in control of the caching mechanism of the browser, and we never ever had that before. And that's a pretty powerful way of having local storage, much more powerful than local storage or IndexedDB used to be. They still work in concert. You can still use local storage and IndexedDB for other things. But the service worker for static files is one of the easiest and simplest ways to make it much, much faster for your end users to have your application, and much better for you because you don't have any traffic if you don't need to. All of your users basically store the stuff themselves. That's why it works offline. And also make it better for you because your traffic goes down on your website instead. No, it goes down because you want it to go down in terms of traffic numbers, not being down. You can intercept network requests and define what happens. You can serve from cache, you can refresh, or you can convert before display. WebM is a great format that is much smaller than JPEG, for example, but not every browser supports WebM. So you can, in JavaScript, test if the browser supports WebM, convert all the JPEGs to WebM, put it in a cache, and then load them from there. Or even create them on your server, point them to another direction and put them in there. And out of a sudden, instead of having the 50 meg of JPEGs, you have like 10 meg of WebM, because the end user on this device, where you store that information, you know they can actually use it. You can refresh your app in the background. You can pull new content and notify the user with push notifications that something new is available. So that's another thing. Like, you don't need to have the website open all the time to get new updates. You can update them in the background. Next time the user goes to your application by clicking the icon or typing in the URL or following a link to the URL, they get the newest version of your app automatically, because you changed the service worker in the background and you let them pull the data when it was available, not like when the user is there. Now, tools and resources to PWA are plentiful. There's many, many things you can do, you can look at and you can use. First one is the Service Worker Cookbook by Mozilla. This is right now not under maintenance anymore, but I'm part of the team that want to take that over. It's a listing of existing service worker examples explaining what they do and what you can apply them for. So they're all like general usage, caching strategies, web push notifications, and they're simple code examples how to use a service worker in your own environments. If you don't want to go down the rabbit hole, if you don't want to understand everything of the Service Worker API, because it becomes very complex and it's actually changing a lot over the years as well, you can also use an abstraction. One abstraction is by Google. It's called Workbox. And when we look at the Bing stats, when we index a lot of PWAs, we found that most people are actually using that one, which is kind of weird, but I guess convenience wins over understanding everything that you do. So Workbox is an abstraction layer on top of Service Worker that just has like Service Worker, cache, network first, these resources. And then every time the user comes to it, it loads it from the network. And if the network is not available, it loads it from the cache. Or you say cache first, and then it loads from the cache first, and only from the network when the user is capable of downloading the functionality. PWA Builder is something I'm working on, which is kind of cool to actually work. It's open source, it's on GitHub, so if you please send me pull requests and help us with the project if you find some issues, we're happy to. What you do with it, you provide a URL to your application. And that could be your blog, that could be anything. We then go through the index.html and find all the stuff that has to get into a web manifest, and try to precede all the things that are there. We're pulling your fav icon, for example, and when it's big enough, we generate all the different sizes of icons for all the different operating systems from your fav icon for you. There's also a generator there if you want to upload your own image and generate the icons accordingly. We do that as well. We create the web manifest describing what the app is. We create a service worker for offline functionality and push notifications. So right now there's only 3 recipes in there. That's on my backlog to put like more in there. So if you have any requests, what you think an app like that should offer, please put that again in GitHub. And you can create binary apps for older Android, iOS, and Windows Store and Windows 7 from it as well. Because what it does, it's taking a UWP container and loads the PWA in there. So if you got Windows 7 that doesn't support Service Worker, if you got iOS that doesn't support Service Worker yet, we can create a binary file for you from your PWA to send to these stores automatically as well. It was of course not going to be the coolest iOS app on the planet, but it's going to be very, very easy to maintain, which is the benefit of a PWA. We also put a lot of documentation on PWA Builder, so there's an in-depth explanation on validator of generator for web manifests and service workers, so it explains to you what everything does, and you can upload your manifest and your service worker, and it will validate it and lint it for you and say like, that's actually not working, this is not a good idea, here you're caching far too much, that's a performance issue, and so on and so forth. Google are already in that game. They have a thing called Lighthouse. Lighthouse is an extension to the Google Developer Tools, and I'm quite sure it's going to be sooner or later in there as well. And what it does, it verifies and links your PWA that is open right now and gives you a progressive app score, a performance score, an accessibility score, and a best practice score where you can test against all the things that, according to Google, are the best practices and the most important performance things. I trust a lot of these things as well. There's, of course, criticism that some people say this is Google trying to force their best practices onto people. But you know what? If end users getting faster experiences, I don't care who forced his best practices onto somebody else. Because a lot of times we don't have time to optimize. So choosing from an existing experience is probably not a bad idea. I don't like those stats, though. I don't like those numbers. Because as soon as you give something like numbers to people, people start gaming the system and trying to reach a 100% score. So people will put a notification API or notification service worker into their website so they reach the 100% functionality on PWA, although they don't need it. So take this numbers with a grain of salt. Don't try to game the system. Try to game your app to make the best experience for your end users. What the web can do today is a good reminder of showing how far we've come in terms of access of hardware and functionality in browsers. So this one links through all the different standards that are available, like advanced camera controls, recording media, and it gives you a tick box or a check mark. No, a check mark or a cross, depending if your browser that you're using right now, on the operating system you're using right now, can do these things and what they cannot do. So before you go on Twitter and complain that some browser doesn't do something, try this out and find out that it actually does, because your information of not doing it might be 2 years out of date. There's a PWA directory, which is not that maintained, so there's lots of double things in there, but it's quite cool to actually look through and see what other people have done. And it's a PWA is like a web standard like everybody else. You can look at their service worker, you can look at their index.html, you can look at their manifest and see what they've done, much like we learned developing back then. There's PWA stats by Cloud4. It's an interface on top of some of the wiki from Google where they show you the business cases of PWA. So if you have a business manager that doesn't want to understand what a service worker is, you can show them how much money Forbes, for example, saved by going the PWA route, or how many more users, how much more engagement they've done, how many more success stories they had by going to a PWA rather than like another packaged application, how much money was solved. Of course, some of this is marketing. I love this one application that was an African application, and everyone was like, oh my God, it's 700% more users, much more retention, everybody was happy, unicorns were flying around, and it was great. And even like on iOS, which doesn't support Service Worker, we had like 75% more users. And then I looked deeper into it, and it turned out it was a beta of the application that was only sent to 500 people. So one of those users had an iPhone, and that was the 75% rise in iOS usage. So yeah, sometimes do look deeper before you actually start being successful. I just gave a talk. I gave this similar talk at a conference in Serbia, and in our monthly report, we now have an 825% rise of usage in Serbia for PWA Builder. Because 46 people used PWA Builder after my talk. So my boss was like, oh my God, that's so successful. And I'm like, yeah, look at the number, how many people they were. But hey, if you want to give me more money, fine. So PWAs are a great opportunity to clean up our act in apps. And the best thing, and I cannot repeat that often enough, is the link. The link as the distribution model is the groundbreaking difference here. Not having to go through an app store, not having to go and have like extra buttons for every platform on your website to download the application is a changing, well, not a changing thing, but a changing thing for applications. So if it's a news item, an article, a blog post, a bot, an email, a message, a poster, an NFC beacon, a movie product placement, a dog collar, it doesn't matter. As soon as there's a link that somebody can activate in some way or another, you can actually go to it and you can follow it up, and it becomes an app, because HTML loads, the JavaScript executes, the service worker runs, the magic happens. The second time the service worker runs, you have extra functionality. Things work offline, and you can ask for more permissions. And it's a proper thing to understand is that PWA is a try before you buy. You install the application by visiting it in your browser, and you grant more permissions with more visits. So the first time you go there, it says like, hey, by the way, I'm an application. Do you want to have an icon on your desktop? Second time you go there, I now work offline. Third time, hey, if you want to get updates from this, you can subscribe to the notifications, but you don't need to. You can just come back and I will be new for you as well. Think about notifications and these kind of things as the end of a process, not as the start. So when somebody reads your thing, Una Kravitz has done a really cool plugin for WordPress, for example, that gives you a make this article offline button at the end of everything just using a service worker. No database involved, nothing, she just scrapes the HTML, puts it in your offline cache, and next time you go there, you can read that article on the train without having a problem. Allow users to do what they came for and reach what they want to reach, and don't demand users to change their device. It drives me crazy. They're like, oh, this application is free. You only need a $900 phone to use it. Great. I'm on the web. I've got a fast connection and a great screen. Why can't I give you my money? Reach people where they are. Don't ask them to cater to you. And I think it's a good opportunity right now to simplify our products. We fixed, we slimmed them down, we rethink the approach, and new users will enjoy our products. Google's message about PWA is all about the emerging markets, about Africa, Bangladesh, India, where people have really, really small memory print phones with really shitty connections. So PWA can help with that, because the upfront loading is much, much smaller than with a native application that actually has no space on the phone any longer. And you can use and discard PWAs without having to go through an installation and uninstalling process. The PWA approach fixes the worst problems of native apps and brings the best of the web to the app space. So when we talked about what a PWA has to be, the messaging, a lot of people talking about it, is different now. And I hate acronyms with a passion, but it's interesting that the acronym is FIRE. If you like acronyms, start working for Microsoft. Every meeting, there's like 5 words I don't understand. And I have to look up and ask people what the hell it was. Or sometimes I make them up and see who goes with it and like not understands what's going on. But PWAs are supposed to be fast. Load as fast as possible. Show something on the screen while the user is still downloading the thing. And don't make them wait with like an animation or something like that, because nobody loves loading screens. Looking at you, website of this conference. That little red button that's like pulsing, that looks like air horner or something like that. And have responsive interfaces. Don't build laggy interactions. Don't try to simulate native scrolling with JavaScript. It will not work. Make sure that users have a nice interface to play with, because any delay on a touch device feels like, I don't trust this. This is not the right thing for me. PWAs need to be integrated. That means your PWA shows up as an icon on the home screen. It shows up in your task switcher. It shows up in your dock. It shows up in your searches. So a PWA installed through the app, through the PWA builder, for example, right now, we will get there eventually as well. We'll also look up, you will also find the Cortana searches on Windows 10. You should find it in Spotlight searches on a Mac in the future as well. So don't tell people this is a website that has some app features. If you want to build an app, build an app. And all the platforms that support PWAs have fully integration into the operating system, because they should not be anything else than the other applications running there as well. They should be reliable. They should be working regardless of network state. And there's no such thing as a black and white network state. There's no like offline, online. There's lots of in-betweens to make you crazy and get you very, very annoying. Expect functionality to not be there and networking conditions not be there. There's every developer tool in browsers now has a simulation, and Mac actually has it in the operating system, that simulates flaky connections as well. If you have a fast connection in your office, don't test with that thing, test with a terrible connection. Facebook used to have these 2G Tuesdays where they throttled down the connection of the whole office to a 2G speed, so people felt the pain of their end users, and that's pretty good. Or just get a connection in England, that's the same thing. And they have to be engaging. Be an icon, use notifications, and have background updates. Engage users with your application rather than them having to come back to the application all the time. But do it without being pushy. Don't do them like, please come back, I miss you so much. Say like, hey, something cool happened. Do you want to have it, yes or no? Do you want to open the app? Fine, you just said yes. Next time you're coming back, this has been answered. You know, like when you get these notifications from like email systems, you say like archive that, do that. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Don't expect people to go back to your app and love it and have it the only thing on the screen all the time. Twitter is a great example. This is like, one of them is the PWA, the other one is the native one, and they both do the same thing. They both allow me to read tweets, they both allow me to upload photos, they both allow me to actually type in things and have full integration with the cool mobile keyboard that I have on my thing. The only difference is this one here is Twitter Lite, so it loaded much faster. It updates automatically every time Twitter does a change of like 140 to 280 or like rounded corners that people get super excited about. I just opened it and the new functionality was there. I didn't have to go to the store and upload and download the whole thing. And the other thing it does really, really well is that it takes about, in my case right now, 1/10 of the data that the native application uses. In constant reading and constant tweeting, and whoever follows me knows I tweet a lot. It basically saved me a lot of money when I'm roaming outside the country and when I'm using things differently. But the functionality is the same. An end user should not need to know which is which, because they will not compare the two. They will just see, hey, that's a PW, that thing works well and fast. I don't care what technology is behind it. And that's all I had for this keynote, so I thank you very much, and I hope you get inspired to build something cool.
Thanks, Chris. So we have a coffee break. The sessions are all on the same floor where you came in here. There's 3 session rooms. They will not be in this room. So go meet with the sponsors, go grab some coffee, and then the next session starts at 11? Does anybody know? I actually don't know. Don't miss it. Great sessions. Thanks.
Look at the schedule.
Schedule.